right, final hour on this final broadcast of this week, first week of the new year. We're back live this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. And, of course, next week for a few of the days, Jason Burmis is here in town. He'll be sitting in with a lot of important and informative guests coming up. Now, I want to go back to Alan Watt. Alan, we've been having riveting, informative discussion here. People that say we're being negative, we're not. It's like looking out your window and seeing a storm coming in. Somebody says, what's the weather? Oh, storm's coming in. Oh, don't be negative. All we're doing is covering the facts here, the reality. You alluded about 15 minutes ago to the carbon footprint, the allotted amount of creds you'll have on your card. All of this is admitted. You know, even if you, quote, have wealth, you won't be able to spend it because it'll be past your carbon footprint. And then, of course, that will all be selectively enforced. I mean, this is the total controlled society with the technology to try to carry it out. So can you speak more about life under the carbon footprint, which they're now bringing in? Obama says you'll have weekly, monthly visits to your farm, your home. You'll get special permits to do any changes to your house. Cows, $170 tax, soda, but then all foods, satellite boxes in all your cars, taxing you as you drive. They're now saying it all. Everything we warned people about that was in the planning documents we saw decades ago. We're now here in this continuum from the early elites forming and the scientific dictatorship several thousand years ago to now. How far along on that continuum towards what they believe is their end game are we? Are we 80% there, 90% there?
I think we're probably 90% there. That's why it is in the open now, and they're not really concerned. They have all of the classes they need. As I say, it's mainly academia on their side. They fund so many of the big corporations. Even with the bailouts, the corporations must do as they're told as well and go along with this. Everyone is being paid off, bought off, or simply blackmailed to go along with this whole agenda. And it's the academia does it willingly. So they're not bothered about the general public whatsoever. In fact, the general public are still watching all the trivia that's doled out to them, as they said they'd do, to keep them happy and entertained. But you're quite right with this whole carbon thing. See, man is the problem according to them. There's too many of us. And everything that we need or use gives off carbon in the manufacturing, even down to creating a house for you to live in is a problem. And that's another way they're getting people off the land. They started voluntary programs to come in and test your house from the government. The government would put so much money towards you re-insulating it, etc. And that scheme was to get us all used to the idea of government coming in and testing our houses to see if they were worthy enough to stand up or be knocked down. And eventually that will become mandatory. They want the people off the land according to Agenda 21, the United Nations program, into these big overcrowded cities, and that's where they plan to contain us. That ties right in with why they have not been upgrading the main cities for many, many years. They're in a mess. The roads are a mess. They admitted in Toronto, for instance, that it would be almost cheaper to build a brand new city than to fix the sewage systems, the roads, and so on, than to be easier to start from scratch. In other words, they don't intend to maintain those cities. These have to be simply to contain the public for a period of 30 to 40 years until the public are pretty well all dead and gone. Now, the whole carbon idea came up from a big think tank that works with all the other big think tanks, well-funded, interconnected with them, and that's the Club of Rome. And the founders of the Club of Rome wrote a book in the 1990s, but they said in the 1970s they were the ones that came up with the idea to unite the planet under and claim that mankind was having a war on the Earth itself, and therefore man was the problem, and they came up with the whole idea of the carbon.
And it's a sick joke because we're a carbon-based life form. Everything on this planet is carbon-based, and they're saying it's going to be a toxic waste, but all their genetic engineering, all their toxic waste dumping, that's okay. It's only carbon dioxide and other gases that come off of life forms, which is all part of the life cycle. They're waging war on the life cycle itself and saying they're going to micromanage and tax every facet. The power to tax is the power to destroy. It is a tax on the life-giving gas itself.
On the GCN Radio Network.
Going to your phone calls here in just a few minutes. Before I do that, I wanted to give Alan a little time to talk about any issues he thinks are most important instead of just my questions and our analysis back and forth. Before we do that, I want to tell you who's made this show possible today, and these are great products that I fully endorse, use, and believe in. Number one is a Cola Blue. A Cola Blue is just an amazing, high-quality atmospheric water generator for the home. Pays for itself with 1 year if you buy your water from the store. Pure, clean water without the fluoride. Unlimited water from the humidity in the air. Machine produces up to 28 liters of water in 24 hours, 7.5 gallons. That's their smaller unit. Great tasting, pure H2O, exactly the way nature makes it. No chemicals, pollutants, or toxins. Neutral pH. And then it goes through an activated carbon filter, then a silver impregnated carbon filter, then a reverse osmosis system, then a taste and food removal filter, and is stored in a tank illuminated by antibacterial fungal UV light. ECOLO blue.com. It's up on screen at prisonplanet.tv. EcolaBlue.com or 866-585-4044. 866-585-4044. Ecola Blue. Absolutely fabulous, folks, and we surely hope that you'll check them out today. Another great sponsor is eFoodsDirect.com, the J. Michael Stevens Group, the highest quality storable foods for the price out there, no GMO foods. They have a lot of videos, free videos you can watch or audios you can listen to at the website eFoodsDirect.com. And you need to give them a call because self-sufficiency is the key. And if you're buying seeds, moving to the country, gearing up to be self-sufficient, moving out of the cities, which I think is advisable for those that can, to face what's coming, may not even have time. This is something you can have now that you know is a backup, lasts more than 10 years in climate control, 10 years in non-climate control. eFoodsDirect.com, the letter E, foodsdirect.com, or 800-409-5633, 800-409-5633. Again, eFoodsDirect.com. You'll never stand in a bread line if you have your own bread. Okay, Alan Watt, you want to continue with carbon footprint, finishing what you were trying to say before we got cut off by break. And then the chemtrails overall, I'm looking at satellite photos on the major weather sites. I'm looking at the whole world now, and I've gone back, because they have archives, as you know, but the listeners may not, of the skies 5, 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't there. Now, not just the major cities like 5 years ago, but all over the U.S., all over Europe, all over Australia, but even some in third world countries, but it's mainly in the West. It's just covered with the trails. They're now at a couple thousand feet in Austin. They stay there for hour after hour. Everybody's getting sick. Major news media has been testing it and finding barium salts, weird fibers, aluminum oxide, all of this. So I'd like you to speak to the chemtrails as well. Yes.
To get back to the footprints, the carbon ones, they're adding taxes onto air flights now too. Because the future you see, they're going to ban basically tourism. That will be no longer necessary. You won't be able to travel to any country without it being required for business or work related. That's the system they're bringing in.
And that'll all be selectively enforced. When you go travel places, you see, I'll never forget, then I'm going to let you continue, but you just bring up points. About 15 years ago, before I was even on air, I was out at Hamilton Pool, this cenote, this caved-in underground cave, beautiful, looks like something out of Tarzan, deep water, big snapping turtles and fish. And I was playing hooky from college, and I was there with a girlfriend laying out on the pebbles, on a summer day, and these Nature Conservancy people showed up, and they were making eugenics comments and going, I can't believe they allow people even here. I can't believe they even allow humans here. And they were just looking at us with anger. And then suddenly you saw the park rangers acting like that, and this whole culture that we've got to be controlled and herded into cities. So I just wanted to add that point that we're not even under the official UN plans going to be allowed in more than half of the United States on their maps alone. You will be shot if you enter it. And people didn't believe me. And then in 1999, I'll never forget, I don't remember the exact issue. I showed it on my local TV show many times and covered it on air for like a month. It was talking about an area in Asia. I want to say Burma. And it said huge national, international biosphere, UN World Heritage Sites, hundreds of thousands of acres were off limits. And it showed soldiers with M16s. And it said if the locals try to enter to even get water or even get firewood, they are shot. And so that model's already going. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. And getting back to the housing, they will be coming around the houses and testing it for leakage, because if you can't heat your house efficiently and contain the heat and use very little fuel, etc., they're basically going to kick you out of that home.
Banning fireplaces, banning space heaters already in Europe, moving to do that in Canada. It just goes on and on.
Yeah, so that's the whole agenda. So through the force of law and using the power of the purse, as I call it, they'll force this whole agenda through. And
cars, airplanes, farms, ranches, space heaters, homes, food, every facet micromanaged and taxed.
Yes, absolutely. That's the big stick, and people who've been trained from birth to always go along with laws, and I don't question it. Everyone else goes along with the law, so why can't you? That's what they say to you if you object.
Well, take the animal ID. Take the animal ID. I mean, it's just so incredible. They just mail them around to people. It wasn't even a law, except in 2 states, federal, and they just say, fill out this contract and sign it. And they sign away their farm and ranch, and now they're finding out they just gave the government an easement and control.
That's correct. So what we're up against here is such incredible organization. That's what really hits anyone who goes into this field of study and research. The incredible organization that's micromanaged right down to the lowest level on every particular area or facet of living. That's what strikes you as overwhelming. And it isn't until you realize this has been on the go for such a long time that explains why they're all interconnected. When Margaret Thatcher left as the Prime Minister of Britain, she said that she now belonged to the parallel government. She called it the parallel government that's made up of ex-prime ministers, presidents, and high officials of all countries. She says, we really run the show. And I just noticed today that Tony Blair and Merkel is over there with Sarkozy talking about this new economic system they're bringing in. So Tony Blair, even though he's an ex-prime minister, is doing more behind the scenes than he could possibly do when he was the front man as the prime minister. He belongs to the parallel government.
He's now graduated to the real government,
yes,
which itself takes orders, while the public's focused on the front dummy puppets. And I meant to get to that story. It's up on Infowars.com right now. They're saying a new capitalism, with what you said 30 minutes ago, where the government pays all the corporations who in turn pay the people. Total control.
Right. That's correct. So therefore government will achieve the objective it was set up to do a long time ago, where they'll be into your personal account, and it will be used as a control factor on what you do, where you go, what you spend your money on. In fact, they can take fines right out of your bank account if you break some carbon law or whatever.
Finland's been doing that. Finland's been doing that for 16, 17 years, where your parking ticket is according to how much money you have, and if you're wealthier, they take more. It's a class thing they did to sell the public, but now it's for carbon footprint, and everything you buy and sell is tracked, and they compare that, and they say it's the world model according to how much money you make, so they can tell if you're not paying taxes or have a black market job.
That's correct. They're making refrigerators now that will read every item that's put in that fridge, and literally it can get in touch with the supermarket to reorder, but it can also obviously get in touch with the government and let them know everything that you have. They will know if all that you have food-wise comes from your ration, your quota, and if you're above that, they'll want to know where you got it from.
Yes, it reads the RFID, and by law they're trying to make it where all refrigerators will have this within 5 years. And then now this big Masonic hospital organization, I saw the story 2 weeks ago, where the old people, if they aren't eating enough food or it's scanning their food, they go ahead and come and take them away to be put in a home or hospice. And then they're also going to track with the school lunch program where you swipe your card. They're already CPSing children, because even if they bring their own lunch, it has to be entered in. And then they say, you weren't feeding your child healthy food, we're taking them.
That's right. And getting back to this parallel government, I mean, Professor Carl Quigley talked about this in his book Tragedy and Hope, and the Anglo-American Establishment, 2 books. He said that the parallel government runs with technocrats. Now, Blair now is a technocrat like Brzezinski or Maurice Strong or Kissinger. And he said that the prime ministers and presidents can take the heat for the policies of government, he says, but the real work is done behind the scenes with technocrats who are not responsible to the public. They're not elected by the public.
His whole life, Blair's whole life, Clinton's whole life, they finally graduate into real government.